EMRAs often list cases of women as perpetrators of violent crimes as evidence of complex institutional misandry. What is your reading of this argument? It's usually some kind of oppression Olympics. They want to play to take the conversation of the gender-based violence women experience and make it all about men. Wow, what a perfect example of Sargon's Law. I'm guessing most of you know what Sargon's Law is, but just in case you don't. Sargon's Law is, whenever a social justice warrior makes a character judgment, that judgment is true about themselves. I find it hilarious that she would accuse us of taking part in the oppression Olympics. Also just before in this very article, she said, "We believe there exists a stigma around men being subjected to violence. In this patriarchal society, men are expected to be able to be strong and to hold their own. There's a certain image that a man has to live up to, and if he doesn't then he is often preyed upon by the rest of society for his shortcomings. This is especially the case if men were to be attacked by women. Women are viewed as the fairest, or weakest sex, and with men being expected to act as the stronger sex, they are seen as subhuman if they cannot fend for themselves against attacks from women. Knowing that this stigma exists, many men surrender themselves to the whims of abusive partners as opposed to coming out about the violence that they face because the fear of what society will brand them as is more significant to them than the fear of their abusive partners. They can trust society to help them. So she is aware of gender-based violence towards men, and she is aware of the fact that it's not taken seriously by society. But then she says, they want to play to take the conversation of the gender-based violence women experience and make it all about men. If violence against men by women is a problem, and the fact that violence isn't taken serious is a problem, then would not talking about these problems be a step in the right direction? Apparently not, as we are only allowed to talk about gender-based violence towards women. And here we see the problem with feminists like this one. They are willing to admit to some men's issues, albeit in the dismissive tone of patriarchy backfiring, but are never willing to do anything about it, and in fact not only criticize those actually trying to fix the issue, but actively try to dismiss the issue as unimportant, as female issues are the only ones permissible in any discussion. So why bring it up in the first place, if they don't think it's important, or really an issue? Well, let me throw a phrase at you. I'm not racist, I have a black friend. It's the same shit as that. Next. We see it as them not being comfortable discussing a very serious issue that needs to be addressed, or in the worst case scenario, not being able to handle it altogether. But violence against women is discussed. It's discussed in the media, in our educational systems, and has entire governmental departments dedicated to it. The same cannot be said for gender-based violence against males. Next. Well folks, I was hoping to finish this article off this episode, and I have come close. There is only a little bit to go. But I don't want to rush it and have to squeeze it in. So I'm going to leave it till next episode. But until next time, always remember, don't drink the poison Kool-Aid.
So, I want to talk about the fact that you've taken gender studies courses, yet you are an EMRA. Are you quite explicit about being an EMRA in these classes? Like, or do you kind of have to be quiet about it?
Well, you know, people take badly to the term MRA, I guess. But I feel like if they meet me and they see that I'm rational and I'm calm and I'm whatever, stereotypes will break down. But I haven't actually, because I guess I became an MRA pretty relatively recently, so I actually haven't taken any gender studies courses after I realized it's all, you know, a fallacy. So I didn't.
So you kind of bought into that narrative before, and then you switched after.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. What was that kind of turning point for you?
It was, as I said, the kind of lack of, like, there wasn't a search for truth. There was just there was a sense of indoctrination. Yeah, that, and there was a lot of anti-male sentiments, and it didn't sit well with me. Even at the back when I didn't identify as an MRA.
You found a lot of hatred or of masculinity and just being male in general.
Yeah, and it what really bugged me is that it's like, well, this doesn't conform to the truth, to fact. Like, I just need to do a quick Google research to realize all of the plethora of men's issues that there are. So it didn't make sense to me. It's like these people, that sounds horrible.
Them.
They, like, people in my, like, the kinds of people that are attracted to these academic circles, they have more of an ideological standpoint rather than a standpoint that conforms to the truth. And they claim to be on the forefront of gender and equality, but it never made sense to me.
So there are a few things I wanted to talk about in this podcast that all obviously relate to you being trans and an MRA and gender studies. And they are men's issues, trans issues, women's issues, the real solutions to these issues, and why the Tumblr solutions won't work. So which one did you want to start with? Which topic did you want to take a bite of first?
Let me have a look at my notes, because I wrote down a few notes just so that I don't stumble. So
yeah, for sure. And I would be more prepared. I apologize to everyone listening right now. I have been in a state of no power and no internet for a few days now. There was a huge storm that happened here. I'm in a different building than my house right now because there's no internet in my house. So that's what I've been dealing with.
I guess we can start with men's issues. Sure.
Men's issues?
Yeah.
All right. So what would you did your talk about men's issues at all, and what men's issues did you start to realize exist first? Like, what did you start to clue into first and realize were the biggest issues that existed for men?
I guess one of the biggest issues that I realized, well, actually, let me just say the first issue, and seemingly the biggest issue at the time, was that when men speak about their issues, they're completely invalidated.
Completely invalidated, yeah.
Yeah. And it takes someone like me to talk about these things before anybody really cares. And that was way back before I was an MRA, when I was more into kind of the more like social justice on campus kind of stuff. And it was like, when men speak about issues, it's almost like they're perceived as though they're complaining from a place of privilege, like they're just whiny.
Yeah,
and it's a bunch of babies. Like that is basically the attitude that people had, and that was the biggest problem. And that really is kind of at the root of all of this, isn't it?
They can't even talk about their issues. That's
yeah.
That's got to be the thing you start at, and it's so true. Yeah. You look at my video on why I'm not a feminist that went viral, and this is a woman talking about men's issues. I talked about men's issues a lot in the video, and everyone was shocked to hear about them, because you're right. Every time the discussion is brought up, which of course it's usually going to be brought up by men, realizing they have issues, whereas women are being taught men have no issues. Every time it's brought up by them, everyone goes ballistic and tells them to shut up or just doesn't listen at all. So people were shocked to hear me say these statistics that men have been repeating for ages on A Voice for Men, that men have been repeating for ages in their own personal classrooms and being silenced. Yeah, so I definitely agree with you on that.
And then these people say that MRAs don't really do anything for men. Like, how are you going to get to do anything for men if you can't even get to the point where you listen to? Like, it blows my mind.
You're called a misogynist if you acknowledge that you have issues.
Oh yeah, I wear the title of misogyny as a badge of honor if a feminist calls me one, because it means nothing. It just means that I'm challenging them. It doesn't mean that I'm actually a misogynist. So I take pride in being called a misogynist by a feminist.
That's so true. It's so rare that you actually hear someone called a misogynist that is actually a misogynist.
Because I love women, and I think that, like, obviously that women are great, but Don't call me a misogynist because I don't agree with your ideology. Like, that's insane.
Now, I have to ask, as a trans individual, do you ever have feminists make the argument against you where they try to invalidate you because you're trans when you talk about women's issues?
When I talk about women's issues?
Yeah. Do you ever have them try to invalidate you because you're a trans individual?
I don't know. I don't talk much about women's issues because
or even when you talk about men's issues in general.
I think what I'm mostly called, either they don't realize that I'm trans and they tell me that I got by on my looks, therefore I don't need feminism.
Yeah, I didn't realize you were trans at all when I first met you.
Or when they do realize I'm trans, they think I'm kind of self-hating, I guess.
Self-hating.
But I've never heard that they specifically say, oh, well, you're trans, so you can't talk about any of this stuff. So...
validate their social justice. They must have quite the heyday, the social justice-ness.
Yeah.
Trans MRA, they just kind of internally explode.
Yeah. I'm, for the most part, left alone at this point. People just kind of avoid me, I guess.
Too afraid to argue with you because they can't have trouble personally attacking you. Sorry, I'm choking on a cookie.